All right, folks. Hello and good morning. Saturday morning here, the 2 days before the national championship game. I'm Chris Heidel, along with George Fischera. Steve Zulish is on assignment this weekend, but he'll be back Tuesday when we will be live at 7:30 with a big show. So, George, thanks for joining us. It's Championship Saturday. Besides this championship getting ready for Monday, we have one getting ready to kick off in basically in a half an hour down in Frisco, Texas, between Montana State and North Dakota State. So it's going to be a very championship Saturday type format here.
Yep, and let's not forget my prediction. I went bold and I said 36-28 Montana. So it'll be interesting to see how that game plays out this morning.
Yeah, so Montana State, you say 36-28?
Yep.
Okay. I'll say that in the archives here, so we have it. So folks, we have a big show on the program today. We're just going to do some Alabama Georgia talk here. We have coming up real shortly. We have Andy Dasher who does stuff for Georgia. So he hopefully will be joining us in basically in 3 minutes. We'll talk Georgia football, a rematch of the game against Alabama. It seems like it's almost every year between Alabama, Georgia, and Clemson. Maybe one day we'll get somebody else differently. Maybe down the road.
Well, they could have paired this up differently. I think that Cincinnati should have had a number 1 seed, and then you give Alabama the number 2 seed. You seed Georgia number 3 or Georgia number 2, Alabama number 3, and this way you don't get people, playing each other twice.
Right.
They said that this was all set up for an all SEC national championship. Right. So, but we're not on the selection committee. It's to us, it's just an opinion.
Exactly. So let's bring in Andy Dasher, who does a great job for Georgia. Hi, Andy. How you doing? And are you in Indianapolis? And how's the weather?
I am currently actually in just outside of Nashville right now. We're making the drive up, so we're not quite there yet.
Wow. So what's the temperature in Nashville right now? I know everybody had snow and everything this week on the East Coast. So.
Yeah, there's actually a ton of snow and ice still on the side of the highway right now. But it's up to 41 degrees, so it's not bad at all.
Nice. Wow. So just talk about Georgia. This is round 2 against Alabama. It seems like every other year, if it's not Georgia or Clemson against Alabama or Georgia versus Alabama. It seems like every year it's a switch back and forth.
Well, this game has kind of gone back and forth. I mean, as far as playing the game anyway, Alabama has won 7 straight over the Bulldogs. Three of the last 5 of the games I think of the 7 that they played. But Alabama, to their credit, always come back in the second half and ultimately won the game. So it's going to be curious to see if Georgia can finally get over that Bama hump on Monday night.
Go ahead, George.
So, Anthony, we had you on before the season started, and we had a phenomenal conversation about what was Georgia going to do with the season, right? And especially opening up against Clemson. And I remember Chris and I making the bold prediction that Georgia was going to beat Clemson. In my opinion, I think it sort of set Georgia off on a positive note for the season. What are your thoughts?
No doubt. I mean, although Clemson, turned out to be not quite the team everybody thought they would be when the season began. Still, it's a big-time game, big-time opponent, big-time environment. And I think they gave the team a lot of confidence, even though, again, the offense did not score a touchdown in that particular contest. Just getting that win, I think.
Yeah, I think there was, that confidence to give them that big win. I know Georgia defense didn't, they shut down that Clemson offense on that first night, but it seems like they set that up throughout the year, except for that SEC title game.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed your question there. I mean, I think that we kind of
trying to say, out. Yeah, to the folks, I know you're there in Nashville. That win against Clemson actually made Georgia's defense look like not the '85 Bears.
Yeah,
but, made it look like people know they have a great defense because the rest of the season they were shutting people out. They were cutting down great running backs and all that stuff until they got to the Atlanta against Alabama, and Alabama figured out how to do it.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Georgia, that Clemson game was kind of a harbinger, I guess, of things to come because, like I said, up until the SEC title game, that's pretty much what they did every week. But Alabama, to their credit, I mean, they kept Georgia, off of Bryce Young's back. I mean, Georgia did not get a single sack in that game. I don't believe they had a tackle for loss. And
Go ahead, George.
Georgia have to do is, and that would be to get pressure on Bryce Young.
Yeah. Hey, Anthony, I'm sitting here looking at some stats. Georgia's number 1 rank overall. This is per ESPN Power Index. Number 1 overall. Number 2 in offense. Number 1 in defense. I won't talk about special teams because it's 34.
Mm-hmm.
But history shows it's hard to beat a team twice in one season.
Yeah.
Notre Dame had that issue against Clemson in the ACC championship last year. And now you have Georgia and Alabama, where Alabama won game 1. I got to be honest. I think I'm tipping towards Georgia to win game 2, the game that counts.
Yeah, I think that's probably what Las Vegas is thinking. The exact, same thing. Installing the Bulldogs as a 3-point favorite. And I guess theoretically it is tough. You can come up with a number of examples where a team that won the first time that did not have that kind of success in game 2. The thing I look for of Alabama, though, again, is the quarterback. Bryce Young, Heisman Trophy winner. We saw what he did in Atlanta. Also, Jameson Williams. We saw what he did to the Bulldogs secondary. Now, granted, Alabama does not have John Mechie this time around, so that may help Georgia defensively, maybe kind of put a little more focus on Williams. But yeah, I mean, just look historically what teams have done the second time around. They've not always had that same kind of success.
Yeah. Hey, talk about the Cook brothers. They love Michigan. Davin Cook, ran right through him a couple years ago against when he was playing for Florida State, and James did the same thing a week ago. I guess John Harbaugh does not want Jim does not want to do anything with a Cook brother anymore because they know how to get through that Michigan defense. So is that something that Georgia needs to get going against Alabama?
No doubt. I mean, James Cook is maybe Georgia's most dangerous player in space, and what he did against Michigan to kind of stand for himself. But he's also in the past had some success against Alabama. Notably, I think in the game they played in Tuscaloosa. But he's a guy, no doubt, that they're going to be looking to get in one-on-one situations, let him attempt to make plays to beat Alabama.
Yeah. So Anthony, let me let you go. It sounds like, do you need gas? No,
that's just a turn signal. That's just a turn signal. It beats make a left turn, which is what we're doing right now.
Okay, I'm thinking like, maybe next time I have to send you a card.
No, we good. We good.
Yeah, that's cool. George, go ahead.
So Anthony, I got to give you a little heads up, buddy. It's really, really cold here. I'm up here in northern Indiana.
Yeah.
And it is just cold. It's been cold the last 3 days. But you want to get in here before the freezing rain starts.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Well, we should be there, I would think, before 5 o'clock. So once we do that, I don't plan on leaving the hotel anytime soon. So we'll be good.
Smart man. What is the one statistic and that will lead to a Georgia victory?
One statistic. I'm going to go back to the defense now. I think Georgia needs to sack, Bryce Young. I think at least 4 times. Put Alabama's offense in a situation where at least behind the sticks, some of the occasion. Because again, if Bryce Young can sit back in the pocket and just pick out his receivers, it could be another tough night for Georgia.
So mark it, Chris. 4 sacks.
4 sacks. Well, it's 20. I just want to let you know it's 29 degrees here where I am in Maryland, so it's cold. Yeah, let's get back down to Florida. It's chilly.
Sorry if y'all fading out on me.
Yeah, it's 29 degrees where I am right now, so it's cold. I just got to say I'm tired of this cold weather now.
Well, it's not something I'm used to either, but I'm good.
Yeah, the good thing is you're in the dome on Monday night, so that's
exactly.
Exactly.
I'm not going to be up in Green Bay freezing my off out in the wide open spaces, so I'm not going to complain.
Exactly. Well, Anthony, let me let you go because I want to get you back on the road, and thanks for taking some time. Be safe driving out there, and hopefully you guys get there before that freezing rain that's coming my way here Sunday morning.
All right, guys. Thank you all very much.
All right, see you. Bye.
Good luck, Anthony.
Yep.
All right, Anthony Dasher, managing editor of GeorgiaSports.com. Yeah, he's driving. He's in Nashville. He might want to stop off and get a music contract before he goes up to Indianapolis.
I think somebody was driving him.
I know, but it sounded like his, like when you forgot to fill up gas, and it's like, yeah, that's why I was like, do you need gas?
I don't think there was a seatbelt on. I think that's what the noise was. Yeah,
exactly. So speaking of Championship Saturday, we right now starting real soon at 12 noon is Montana State versus North Dakota State, and I have an interview I did on New Year's Day with the voice of the North Dakota Bison, Jeff Culhane, who is right now getting ready to broadcast that game down in Frisco. So here's my interview I did at my other location. So here it is. All right, Jeff. Thanks for taking some time here on New Year's Day. Happy New Year to you and everybody up there in North Dakota. Talk about this week, busy week for you guys, getting ready for the big game down in Frisco against Montana State, a team that you guys used to play a lot, but you haven't played them since 2019.
Yeah, correct, Chris, and good to be on with you guys as well. We're looking forward to this week, and you kind of get into the holiday mode and holiday haze or whatever, if you will, and finally game week is upon us. But yeah, this is an exciting matchup. There are a ton of storylines in this game, and the obvious ones are Brent Vigen's connection to the state of North Dakota, a former NDSU football player and longtime NDSU assistant coach, and what they've been able to do in his first season. They took the year off last year. A lot of people were wondering how that would affect certain teams not playing any football at all, and they made it work for them. And on NDSU side, it's kind of business as usual here. 9th national championship game in the last 11 seasons, and Matt Ensign and his staff have done a great job once again. It
seems like you guys are familiar going to Frisco, except for the springtime when South Houston, San Houston State went there this past spring. But it seems like every year you guys are there in Frisco, Texas. Are you getting any? You buying a house there anytime soon?
Well, they do affectionately dub it Fargo South. So. Yeah. People know they've got a routine, right? For those that have gone all 8 seasons, they have a routine. They usually drive down, break it up. They'll stay in a certain place and meet up with friends or family, and then usually get down to Frisco, which is obviously about a half hour north of downtown Dallas, either Thursday or Friday. And so people love it. It's really amazing how the city of Frisco has associated with this game, with the FCS National Championship. And it's also pretty impressive about how the city of Frisco has developed and thrived this last decade. Obviously, with the Dallas Cowboys putting their facility in Frisco, it has really brought a lot of attention to the community. And so Bison fans that have been there since 2011, as we mentioned, 9th time in the last 11 years, they can tell you where things were, where they weren't, and how that city has really latched onto this game.
Yeah, I haven't seen you guys since you guys came to Towson here earlier this year, and that game was, you guys just took over that game real quick against Towson. It was like not even a contest. I was like, okay, I guess I'll go home early, because it was just it seemed like Towson's not in the same ballpark. Is Montana in the same ballpark as you guys, or is it just like you see a common copy of what you like the guy used to be at North Dakota State, used to play there? Do you see a copy of each other?
Yeah, Chris, I think there's a lot of similarities between the two. You hear Brent Vigen talk about how he wanted to get this program moving in the direction of, hey, we're going to think about playing not just 11 or 12 games. We're going to think about playing, 14 or 15 games. And when you do that, the mindset is you're thinking about Frisco, Texas, and playing for a national championship. And, it's fascinating to hear him talk about what they've tried to install there, because it sounds just like what we hear at NDSU about the strength and conditioning program, nutritionists, the double rep system in practice. This time of year for the Bison has been affectionately dubbed winter camp, because it's 3 extra weeks of practice that only 2 teams get to have. And you talk about development and young players, and it's essentially another spring ball for NDSU. So, no, there's a lot of similarities. I think what the Bison do well, obviously, is they own the lines of scrimmage, the trenches up front offensively and defensively. And, defensive coordinator David Braun needs to get a ton of credit. I mean, after a spring season where it didn't look quite like NDSU defensively, they have put together a historically great year, one of the best defenses in the history of NDSU football. So it's been a fantastic year for that group. And then, you mentioned Montana State. I think, there's a lot of similarities. Some areas it's like looking in a mirror. They want to play great defense. They want to run the football. And obviously the folk hero storyline of Touchdown Tommy from Butte, America has really encapsulated and grabbed the attention of everyone around this game.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Big Sky Conference. Seems like those teams are very good. You see them every year in this playoffs. You have Weber State, and you have Montana State. You have other people in that conference. It seems like that conference is trying to become just like where North Dakota State is.
Well, I would say with the Missouri Valley Football Conference, at least this season, the Big Sky is the other league you would dub a power conference. The CAA took a step back, I thought, this year. As a whole in the landscape of FCS college football. And the Big Sky has had a tremendous season. I mean, Montana State, obviously. Montana had a great year, and it's too bad that they suffered some injuries to, some key players early in the game against James Madison in the quarterfinals. Obviously, Eric Barrier at Eastern Washington, I think, should win the Walter Payton Award. I hope he does. I don't have a vote, but if I did, that's who I would vote for overall. And then, Sacramento State, what Troy Taylor has done out there, he just wins. And they went to Montana and won. They win the Big Sky regular season conference championship outright. And so, they have done a fantastic job at a place that, people don't think of right away when you think of great football programs. Troy Taylor has done a heck of a job at Sac State. So, yeah, the Big Sky this year, I'd say you put them right next to the Missouri Valley Football Conference as the two best leagues in the country.
Well, before I let you go, what are the three keys for North Dakota to North Dakota State win their another national championship? Just like it seems like every year, it seems like this time of year, Alabama and North Dakota State are basically the ones that dominate football.
Yeah, it's going to sound cliche, but NDSU has to be able to slow down Tommy Mellott, slow down his quarterback run game. If you can turn him over, that's obviously very, very important. One item about Mellott is he is so good with his legs and just a player that doesn't look like a freshman right now. It looks like he's been playing for, 3 years. He's played essentially 3 games, 3 starts, even though he was a Wildcat earlier in the year. But, he has not been sacked in the last 10 quarters of this postseason. So can the Bison, who set a school record in sacks this year, get to him, bring him down, cause some problems, and maybe speed up his decision-making process overall. And offensively, NDSU, the way they're playing right now, if they continue this trend of running the football, not turning it over, and pounding away up front, I think that is a recipe for success for North Dakota State in this game. There's always something different. There's always a wrinkle. Because there's not another game after this. So fascinated, Chris, to see how the coaching staffs come together and how they're able to maybe throw their own little, whether it's a special teams fake field goal, fake punt, any sort of trickeration on offense. I think you're going to see some of that in this game on either side.
That's cool. Well, Jeff, let me let you go. It's New Year's Day. Enjoy the family. Enjoy spending time with your family and all that stuff, and have a safe trip to Texas.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
All right, man. All right, so that's Jeff Culhane, who is the voice of North Dakota State football. They'll be kicking off in 10 minutes on ESPN. I think it's on ESPN too. Frisco. Or the Ocho, like I said to my father all the time, the Ocho. So, very interesting. How it's basically old school for these schools like North Dakota State and Alabama. They're used to being here this time of year. It's this old hat.
The run's going to stop at some point, Chris.
It has to be.
There will be a stop, and then it'll be their fan base's turn to complain, because winning all the time, you don't know what it is like to lose,
right?
And I hear a lot of that here in the South Bend area. But when your team's winning all the time, and when you can't win the big dance, it becomes a struggle.
Well, you got to go back to what you guys go through up in South Bend. Same thing in Tallahassee. Florida State was running through the ACC like it was their own damn division, and until Virginia found a way to beat them in 1993, and then ever since then, everybody's already caught up to Florida State. Now Florida State's behind everybody now. It's fascinating. Like Florida State, 1993, if you look at that national title team, they ran people over. It was like it was like a freight train. It was like they beat Clemson one game one year that year 52-0. And like the ACC, and people were complaining back then, like, oh, Florida State shouldn't be in the ACC and they should go do something else. No, they don't need to go anywhere. And now it's like, oh, now Clemson's the team. We got to knock them off.
Yep.
And now you're going to see what Clemson team is this next fall with the two new coordinators.
Yeah.
That's going to be very interesting to see how Dabo could shape them into what he had for 10 years with Venables and Elliott. And we'll see how Elliott and Venables do without Dabo.
I think that you got to have different teams in there, and the only thing that can happen is teams just got to figure out how to get better.
Right.
How do you get over that hump? Notre Dame seems to be in that question every year. They get so close, and then it's a matter of finishing.
Right. And I agree. And to me, it's like you start out strong, and Notre Dame has a different schedule. You guys have the independent schedule. 2020 was basically it's not even on the in the record books. So you went to a conference team and all that stuff. But you play an independent schedule, and it all depends on how the other teams look during the whole season. Like Navy this year was not the Navy team that you were a couple years ago. They were off and on. USC, now they have a new coach in Lincoln Riley. But before that, they had an interim coach, and they were up and down all year. They didn't get to a bowl game, or if they did, And then you have Stanford, who basically 3-9, and normally that's a great program. It depends on every year. It's a different year. Like you don't know what comes in and what comes out.
And that's why statistics in that aspect, Chris,
Mm-hmm.
You can only go by statistics of this year. You can't say, well, this team is 8-4 against them or 12-1 against the team, because every year the team changes.
Right.
And it's really a statistic it's overrated, because you got to look at the performance of that year, because every year is a different team. It just adds to it, when a team continues to beat a particular team. But statistically, you have to look at how the teams are performing each year.
Right. Well, look at the 15 years ago today. It was the BCS title game between Florida and Ohio State, and the Gators ran Ohio State out of the building there in Arizona and won 41-14. Look at this stat. They held Ohio State to 82 yards. That's an Urban Meyer team that basically was, pretty much a decent team in that year.
Yep.
And see, that's what football used to be like, the BCS. Like, ooh, this is cool. And I do have a little footage because I found it. It was on Fox. And at that time there was some guy named Tim Tebow. You didn't even know who the hell Tim Tebow was.
Yep.
It was Chris Leak and Tim Tebow were the two quarterbacks playing for Florida. And Chris Leak, who basically became a player up in the CFL, and he's gone.
And then isn't it interesting how Urban Meyer ends up at Ohio State?
Right. Yeah. Oh, my ticker. My ticker hurt.
Yep.
And then also he plays the card. I was waiting for besides Jacksonville this year, I was waiting for him to whip out the ticker card. Oh, I can't do the NFL. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
We could put a whole show on that situation.
Oh my God.
But
I heard some stuff about he actually literally kicked his kicker. What the?
no, that was actually that was national news.
Yeah.
He said, "Well, if you did your job better," he goes, "I'm the head coach. I can do what I want." Well, players union is not going to take well to that. Number two, if you're looking, I before he got fired, I was like, he's just looking for another way out.
Right.
And you know what? It's a quick hit, and it is what it is. He's not going to change.
Oh yeah, I agree. Well, this week I had a chance to talk to some of the Georgia players. I talked to Davin Cook's brother, James Cook, on the other day, and asked him about Alabama's defense, because Alabama shut down a great Cincinnati running attack, because that thing was rolling pretty well until I guess the 3 weeks off before the Cotton Bowl.
Well, the weird part is that the Alabama has in the ESPN Power Index is the number 5 defense in the country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have the number 3 offense. So it's just, Alabama, you could say, had an off year as
Right.
far as that. I mean, they had the one loss that they ran into there, but I don't know. I still think that Georgia has something there that, hey, we learned the first time, we're not going to let it happen twice.
Right. Exactly. So here's my interview with James Cook, who I talked to earlier this year, and I asked him about playing against, Alabama. Hey, James, thanks for taking my question. And we talked earlier this year when you played against Kentucky. Good game on that one. Talk about against Alabama's running defense. They controlled Cincinnati so much on New Year's Eve. What do you guys have to do to get that running game established? Because they're pretty decent up front.
I mean, just stay physical like we've been doing all year. I mean, we got the guys up front too. I mean, we just got to stay physical like we've been doing all year and kind of play.
All right, thanks for the motivation there, James.
He gave you nothing, man.
Hey,
that's straight out of the Bill Belichick playbook, by the way.
Exactly. And you want to know the other one does. The quarterback Stephen for Georgia. He was on this morning, and I think I was falling asleep on the laptop because he was like, "Yeah, I'm playing football today." I'm like, "Dude, little coffee, little Dunkin' Donuts. What do you guys have out there? You have some kind of coffee place that you use?"
Oh, there's plenty of Starbucks out there.
Get an IV going, buddy. Yeah, it's like, jeez. Yeah.
I mean, they're staying right downtown, so I mean, they got access to some pretty good coffee houses there. So.
Right, exactly. Well, we also talked to some other one more Georgia player, Walker, the outside linebacker, for the Dogs, and I asked him about just playing against the defense, about Alabama's offense, and what they got to do to contain it. So here is my interview with him. Hey, Clay, thanks for taking my question this morning. Congratulations making it to the big game this weekend on Monday. What do you guys got to do to control that Alabama offense? Because it seems like when against Cincinnati learned how to control them a little bit, but, the experience helped them at the end. What do you guys got to do to make that not happen at the end of the game on Monday?
We just got to do what we're capable of doing, execute on a high level, communicating to one another, and just doing things that we need to do on the back end and the front end as well. We just pretty much can't give up no plays like we did in the SEC Championship. We gave up a lot of plays by a few busts, you know what I'm saying, things like that. But in order for us to do what we have to do, just manage the quarterback pretty good when rushing and, set the quarterback as well, and things should be where it's supposed to be.
All right.
Where's the energy, man? These guys.
Yeah, it's like, come on now. Where's the energy? I love the sign that he gave me before on the air. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, he was like I guess it's like one of those I'm part of his, whatever. I don't know. Yeah, I'm just like, you don't even know me, buddy. Like, thanks for the sign.
What's tough about it is I don't know what it is. I mean, you got some guys in college football nowadays. I mean, they'll give you everything you want. I mean, they'll bring the energy. They'll do this. Guy, you're playing for the national championship game. You're getting an opportunity to express your thoughts. I mean, let's be honest. These NFL teams look for that stuff too.
Right.
I mean, they're all looking. They're all watching. Just maybe not for this year, but for next year, sometime down the road. You got to put it out there, man.
I agree. It's like you got to sound a little more, have a pep in your step instead of like, what's up, man? I'm going to be, your defense is pretty good. And you can't be like Marshawn Lynch and go, I'm just here because I don't get fined.
Classic commercial, by the way, from Subway.
Yeah, I'm just here so I don't get fined. Like, come on, man, really?
But you're not coming out of retirement?
I think he came out 1 year to play for Seattle for like a couple games because I guess he was bored, and then I guess Oakland signed him for like a couple games, or now Las Vegas Raiders.
I don't know, man. It's tough. It's tough
Yeah.
having some of these guys not give you, like I said, this is their opportunity, and not doing anything with it. So
Right. Well, I had a chance yesterday to talk to the the bowl season head executive director Nick Carparelli, who's actually he lives in my area.
okay,
Yeah. So we were talking about these bowl games, and I want to play this interview because you're going to find out that if you're UCLA in the Pac-12 because you pulled that little stunt in the Holiday Bowl, there's something coming for you.
interesting.
Yeah, there's going to be some penalties. So let's let Nick explain because I asked him that question during my little interview with him. So here it is.
Breaking news.
How long are we going to be?
Yeah, recording it right now. Hello, Nick. How are you doing? How's everything going down there in beautiful Annapolis? I know that's where one of the bowl games was supposed to be this year, and kind of got this postponed because of COVID-19. So how tough was it this year with these games going through another year of COVID?
It was tough. This bowl season was, I think, a season of extremes for us. We had 5 games that were canceled because teams backed out. We could blame it on COVID, or we could blame it on other motives for a couple of these programs, I think. But whatever the reason, the 5 games were canceled. But on the other extreme, we've concluding Monday with the college football championship game, we will have played 39 bowl games that across the board were just so much fun. That we had great crowds, great television ratings, compelling matchups, overtime games, a lot of scoring. I don't remember a bowl season this exciting. So kind of a tale of 2 sides of the coin here this year.
Yeah, I do need to ask you a question. With that UCLA NC State game that got postponed at like 2 hours before kickoff or whatever it was, what can the school get penalized for that, or what's the fallout from that? Because I feel like somebody needs to be held accountable for that.
Yeah, you would think so. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of conversations about that between the Holiday Bowl and the Pac-12 conference. Obviously, the ACC was and North Carolina State were tremendously impacted as well.
Yeah.
It does seem odd that a team could go right up to game day 4 hours before kickoff. People are tailgating, and the stadium staff is working and decide they can't play. So they'll sort it out, but I'm confident that UCLA will be held accountable to some extent.
Yeah. Is there going to be some new rules next year with these bowl games? Like, you got to because I feel like this is what my ideas are with these bowl games. You should have like teams in the bullpen ready to go. Like, you have like, because we had Texas A&M bailed out in the Gator Bowl, and then you brought in Rutgers to fill that spot, and that was good. Rutgers needed to be in the bowl game. I feel like they should be somebody like in the bullpen. Okay, all right, your team did not make it, but we're going to put you in the bullpen, but stay close to where you are. Your kids could go home for Christmas, but be ready if somebody bails out, and then or practice practice twice a week or something like that, and say, all right, we're going to go home and all that. So I feel like that's what they should do.
Yeah, that may very well make sense. There's a lot of things to discuss in the off season. My bowl season executive committee meets at the end of January every year to download what just happened last year and what we might need to address for next year. There's representatives from all 10 conferences at that meeting. So I'm pretty confident that we're going to have a robust agenda and spirited discussions out next year. Yep.
Well, let's just talk about these games. We had the Mayo Bowl with, I think I've seen the different ways of doing mayo. I think I'm not going to put it on an Oreo cookie or a donut or I feel bad for Shane Beamer getting smacked in the back of the head of with the mayo 4.5.
Yeah, he was smart though. He kept his hat on. I thought that was a good move.
Yeah. So anything that you saw during the bowl season, you thought it was pretty funny, wacky stuff? Because it seems like everybody wanted to do something better than the Mayo Bowl. Like, I think Bob Stutz wanted to take something shot out of the game or anything, and he goes, "I'm already fired anyway."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell you what, it is fun. I think bowl games are developing a reputation of being really good partners to their corporate sponsors. You know, they're willing to take some chances and be a little bit more creative than other sports entities are, and to have some fun with it. You know, it's serious business. You know, a lot of time and effort and money goes into hosting these games in these given communities, and obviously the teams who play in it want to win. But at the same time, it seems like they don't take themselves too seriously, and they allow themselves to have a little bit of fun with it. So I like that trend.
Yeah, I think that's cool. It makes people want to tune in a little bit longer. They're like, okay, what's going to see at the halftime? Or, oh, we'll see what at the end of the game. Is he going to really put mayo all over himself? You know, I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it gave great exposure to Duke's Mayo, and yeah, it was in the fact that they donated money to charity for him doing that. I think was pretty cool as well.
Yeah, let's talk about the games, like the two brand new games. The one in LA did pretty well. You know, the LA Bowl, at the SoFi Stadium, that went really well. But the one in Fenway, it seems like it's bad luck. They can't get it off the ground. So what do you got to do to get someone who's like, can you just stay there?
Yeah. 2 years in a row. Yeah, I feel bad for them. I on one hand, they've never had one yet, so I guess they can. It's going to be their third try at an inaugural game next year. I do think that game will be very successful. They have the backing of ESPN and, of course, the Red Sox behind it. So I think if anybody can weather, a couple of cancellations, it's them. Bad luck, COVID, opt-outs, transfer portal, which is new. I think we see the most. I think we're seeing the biggest influx of players into that transfer portal that we ever will. Anytime something's new, you get over-indexed a little bit. So I think it was kind of the perfect storm of all those things coming together.
Yeah, but these bowl games, like the one like the Military Bowl right down the street from you, not playing for 2 years. Is there any bowl games in danger of like I need to play next year or else we're done? Because they're losing money.
Yeah, I would think all the games that missed 2 years in a row are in that boat. I think the communities are so proud to host these games, and they're going to rally behind them. So I think the Holiday Bowl, the Military Bowl, Fenway, those games in particular, they need to have a not just a game, but a strong game, strong matchup next year. And it's my hope that their conference partners will over deliver for those games in particular, seeing as they took the biggest hit.
Yeah. So you're heading out to Indianapolis. You're not going from a warm climate. You're going to a cold climate to another cold climate. What is it? Indoors. It's Lucas Oil Stadium.
Yep.
What's the feeling like? What is your expectations like going there this weekend?
Well, it's a busy time. It's I'll be there for 3 days. Everybody in the college football world is there, so you get a lot of things done work wise. A lot of meetings in the in the hotel lobby. A lot of events at night where I can. Get things done. All 10 conference commissioners will be there. Most of the executive directors of the other bowl games will be there. So it'll be busy. It'll be productive, and then obviously capped off with what we hope is a great game on Monday night.
Yeah, just talk about, is the stadium full for that game? Is the people in Indy sell it out? Is it going to be all sell out, or is it going to be still tickets for people to maybe?
No, it's extremely sold out. It's a pretty hot ticket too. I don't. For good seats, you're still paying double face value. So it's the college football national championship game. It's two big brands with two big fan bases. And if you're a sports fan in Indy, the chance to see those two teams play in your backyard, I don't know why you wouldn't go.
Yeah. Let's talk real quick about locally here with Maryland playing in the Pinstripe Bowl. And they look like Boomer Esiason was playing for them for that game. 54 points. I haven't seen Maryland score 54 since a Howard game. It was a regular season game. It was 70-0. But that's pretty good for a Maryland team to say, hey, we could do this, and that might transport them to something better next year.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that was a great performance by them. Certainly gives them a lot of confidence heading into next year. And you make a good point. Bowl games can serve two different purposes for teams, and sometimes both in the same year. It's a reward for a successful season, and it ends that year on a high note. But it also is kind of a kickstart to the following season. Your coaches often talk about, geez, if you win your bowl game, your record looks better. You feel good about, coming back for the second semester and the off-season conditioning and spring practice, and it just sets the tone for a great season the following year. So those bowl games and winning or losing them is really, really important.
You know, like. All right, I've had to break it into two-parter, but that's really interesting that Nick said about there's going to be something going on with that Pac-12 thing.
Well, I mean, first of all, great questions, by the way. He did a really, 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 and you know I joke around when I say with this, but you really did your homework on that one.
Yeah, because I had a lot of questions sitting there watching all these bowl games, and it's like I was going to ask him about when I asked Mac Brown, I'll play it on Tuesday. I talked to Mac Brown a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and I asked him about is college football going to use a practice squad type format to keep so you have players just in case somebody opts out or somebody has COVID, and they are working on something that Mac Brown said. If you let's say George has played 4 games and you redshirt, okay, we could call you back and say, hey, you're a replacement player, and you don't lose your eligibility.
I think you got to think outside the box, Chris.
Yeah.
And you know what? And these are the questions that should be asked of these folks. These are legitimate, good questions instead of some of these BS questions.
Yeah. What is Nick Saban wearing yesterday?
It's no relevance to what's going on.
Right.
It's no relevance.
Right.
But
gotta ask these questions.
These are the type of questions that you and I ask.
Right.
Okay. These are the questions coaches like to answer. These are the questions executives like to answer because they're legitimate.
Right. Well,
it helps them think. And Chris, let's be honest, you gave him some great ideas.
Yeah, you never know.
Some things that never popped into his head, you may have given him some ideas.
Yeah, and I probably won't get the credit for it, but hey, I'll be like, hey, I talked to that guy about that, and it should work.
But that would be the part that makes you feel good, Chris.
Right.
Is the fact that one, you've asked a good set of questions, and two, maybe you open up another train of thought for the guy.
Yeah. Well,
there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
Yeah. What is your motto at Shakedown Thunder? You want to be for the fans, right?
Well, it's more about the fan engagement, but it's also about being a legitimate media source.
Right.
And you're not asking a BS question. You want to ask a question that has an impact.
Right. And it could be on somebody's refrigerator and somebody write a question. Like one year, I asked the Miami Hurricane coach on the ACC teleconference call about his place kicker, missing field goal. He was 4 for 5 from whatever, and it got down to Miami was in the paper, and my brother goes, "Yeah, somebody wrote your question about a reporter asked Al Golden about the place kicker, is his job in jeopardy after missing 3 out of 5 50-yarders."
Yep.
And I think, and this is why I wish people could give me other passes, because if you see in the NFL, all these coaches get the same questions all the time. Even here, we see it in college. It's like they're afraid of asking the hard question. You and I are from you're from Connecticut. I'm from New York. And New York reporters are basically, they don't care. If you ask a question, they don't like it. Well, tough crap. Go back to, cry me a river and, get your job done. Like, have you ever had somebody that, I know you've been talking the Notre Dame stuff, but over the years, but have you ever had a coach you asked and, he basically was like taken back by your question and like, and he basically wanted to do, he didn't want to answer the question, but he had to come up with something?
Oh boy. I would say, it was the head coach of North Carolina.
Okay.
North Carolina basketball, Roy Williams.
Okay, Roy. Mm-hmm.
I'm in a press conference with him after a Notre Dame game, and the question that I asked, and he made jest of it. I mean, it was a great question, but he made jest of it. He's like, "Wow, I wasn't expecting that question." And he looks at his 2 security details, like, "Do you want to come up here and answer this for me, please?"
Yeah.
Okay.
I love Roy. Roy was funny. Roy was great.
But those are the types of things. Those are the situations. It was a tough question. Did he want to answer the question? No.
Right.
But he did.
Yeah.
Roy Williams. My first press conference with Roy Williams.
Nice. I had a press conference with your buddy Randy Edsel out in West Virginia when he was with Maryland.
Oh,
and it was
God.
one of the plays that the ball hit the turf, and they said West Virginia got the interception. Well, if you look at the instant replay, the ball hit the turf before the West Virginia guy picked it off the turf, so it's technically an incomplete pass.
Correct.
Yeah. So I asked Randy Edslow in the press conference that day. I was like, why didn't you challenge that call that in the third quarter? And I wrote down what quarter it was, and you know what he said to me? He goes, "It's not part of my pay grade to do that." Well, guess what?
It's not part of your pay grade.
Yeah,
It
guess
is part
what?
of your pay grade. You're the head coach.
Guess what? The next day in the Sun paper here, somebody wrote my question. It's like a reporter asked Randy Edslow about the incomplete, the interception by West Virginia in the third quarter, and that hit the turf. And his quote was, "I don't get paid. It's not part of my pay grade." And I'm sitting here at work at Walgreens. I'm working at the time, going, "Really?"
Nice.
I was like, "Yeah," it's like,
Yep.
I'm not trying to embarrass coaches.
No.
I do it as a fan. Like my mother calls me up sometimes and goes, why do they keep asking coaches like, how you feeling today? It's like my mom goes, yeah, you just got your ass, by 35 points. He's not feeling real good today.
Right.
It's like, why do you ask those questions?
Yep.
And yes, when I asked Nick Saban the other day, I gotta say I was a little nervous because that's Nick Saban, who personally could tear you a new one.
Sure.
And you could sit on it and rotate it after a while, and you walk away. I'm not that type of person who wants to be part of on his bad side.
No.
Because he'll go off on you. And back to that moron down at, we're calling him a moron now, down in Baton Rouge.
Oh.
Who basically gave me chewed me out last year, who basically I stumped him this year, to basically like my way to tell him to, kiss my ass. Sorry for the language here, but but it's like, that's what you do. I'm not here to make you, be buddy. I'm doing it for what the fans want to know.
You're asking a legitimate question.
Right. And I know there's tons of fans out there sitting on the couch like you and me watching football on Sundays and Saturdays and, and go, why is he doing that call?
Well, I'll be honest with you. Being involved as the media guy, you kind of have to separate yourself as a fan, and but you're okay. I mean, because you're covering it all,
right?
Okay, you don't specifically just talk about Florida State, right? You're not strictly a Florida State program, but you're taking a question from a fan perspective and asking it in a media environment,
right? Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So let's bring in Dan Tortora. He has done so many of these wonderful interviews over the years. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Sorry, trying to get my camera set up here. How are you?
We were just George and I were just talking about I just talked to the bowl director for the bowl season and asked questions yesterday about if UCLA is going to get some penalties for that Holiday Bowl miscue. Like showing up like 2 hours before game time and go, oh, we're going home because we have 3 COVID outbreaks. Like to me it's like ridiculous. And he goes, yeah, they're going to basically have somebody's going to get penalized for that.
Penalized for what?
For leaving the bowl game without even 2 hours before game time, not even telling people until everybody's at the stadium.
Yeah, I mean, if what you're discussing is obviously the opt-outs, is that what we're talking about here? Yeah.
Well, the opt-outs and the teams who basically said they had 3 COVID outbreaks and they should have let somebody know, during the morning hours or a day before, so they could find somebody to fill in, like the Sun Bowl did. Because the Miami, had to opt out because of the their COVID issue.
Yeah. I think. Yeah. No, I was going to say that for me, I think the NC State one was probably the most egregious of an offense, because here they are, they've traveled, they go to this game, they go across the country to get to the game, and just a couple hours before they're like, hey, guess what, we're not playing. I mean, I still thought the Holiday Bowl was going on. I had everything set and ready to go. I had my poll out there, people were voting on it and whatnot. So I mean, I think that it's disgraceful to do something like that and to put somebody in a situation as such. And I think I mean, I understand we live in a very unique time. I understand that the pandemic has caused us to have to ad lib at a moment's notice, but you can't tell me that, you can't let somebody know a few hours prior, the night prior or something like that. I mean, right before game time, 2 hours before, 3 hours before, it's just wrong. It's not okay. We know how Dabo Sweeney responded when things happened at FSU and they canceled the game after Clemson had traveled there last year in the regular season. So we're in unique times, but it's ridiculous to be in a situation like this. And I feel horrible for the bowl games that were canceled. And there was multiple games that were canceled. And we're talking about over, at least 10 teams that didn't get to play the games that they were supposed to play in. So it's unfortunate, but that's where we're living right now.
I know. Well, I got to say, good questions this morning, here, pal. I was listening to you on the other side. Listening to the National Championship Media Day. Good job. Good questions.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, no, it's a great opportunity. Alabama and Georgia are two storied programs in, not only college football, but of course, in the SEC. And what Alabama's been able to do over the years with Nick Saban has just been incredible. And then Kirby Smart coming from the Nick Saban tree, and to have Georgia where he has them. And actually, one of the guys that I know on the staff, Cortez Hankton, who is there as the pass game coordinator and working with the receivers, I got to know him over the years in his come up before he got to Georgia. So, and of course, Doug Marrone covered at Syracuse and at Jacksonville. So I got some connections here in this. I finally got to speak with Nick Saban, which I thought was great. And he answered a question that was picked up and carried by other media outlets. What'd you say?
That was cool. That's awesome.
No, it was nice to have Nick respond to my question about Cincinnati. And, I think this is the American Athletic, who I've been with since before they had a logo and a name, to see them get to where they are today, to have Cincinnati in the college football playoff. I don't want to hear anybody say, well, Alabama beat them, they don't belong. Alabama beats pretty much everybody. So it's not a fair assessment or a litmus test. I'm so happy they made it. And I love the fact that when I asked Nick the question, he said that they absolutely deserve to be in the college football playoff. So it's if it comes from Nick Saban, it's got to be true in college football, right? So
I got to ask you a question before I send it to George. Were you nervous as heck when you got a chance to ask Nick Saban a question?
I don't.
Or do you get nervous? Do you get nervous? Do you get like, oh God?
I think for me, it's a reminder every day, when I wake up in the morning, that I get to do what I love, and I love what I do. I don't think anybody's bigger than me. I don't think I'm bigger than anybody. I don't have an ego. I don't work well with people that have egos. So I think, looking back on 18 years of being a broadcaster, and at least 3,000 people have been on the show at some point, it's not something that I think like, oh, wow, I shouldn't be in the room with this person. It's more of the feeling of, I've wanted to talk to Nick Saban for a really long time, and I was on the same field as him at the Citrus Bowl a few years back. And so it's kind of like thinking of that moment when we were standing on the field by each other after they had won. I think it was Capital one of the games that they had there. And after that had happened, to think about now and say, okay, sitting in a room. But no, I don't think anybody is too daunting of a task to talk to. I think, it's just when you finally get to talk to them, make your question count.
Right. And I was like, when I was listening to your question, I was like, oh God, it's going to come to me. It's going to come to me. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't want to say something dumb, because Nick Saban can actually chew you a very nice, polite, have a nice day and, sit on it and rotate it for a couple of hours, and I'm sitting there going, I want to do this perfectly. And if you hear my voice, I'm like, hey, God, I'm like, it's like so nervous, and I'm like, Dan's ahead of me. I'm like, oh God.
No, you sounded good. What I think is interesting about these Zoom calls is that, like, some of them you get to see each other, and then like the college football playoff ones, you don't see anybody except for the coach. So it's kind of like interesting of like, do they see all of us? Do they see none of us? Do they just hear us? So it's interesting in this virtual world. Like, I'm wondering, is my dog in the camera? Because if she is, she's gonna make the my box a lot better if my dog's in it. So
Yeah. Well, George, you got something for Dan?
Of course. So Dan, we talked earlier, Chris and I, about the matchup.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we've gotten to another SEC national championship game, and there will be an SEC champion. We had talked about the rankings, and the way it was all played out, it was really set up for this to happen. But in hindsight, you could have made Cincinnati a number one seed, or wherever you want to see them, one or two. So at least you don't have two SEC teams going at it, especially two SEC teams that played each other earlier in the season.
Yeah.
I think there's got to be a way that, everyone says the college football playoff was set up to get rid of the BCS, but you're still having these type of scenarios that it's, subjective information versus objective. What are your thoughts?
I mean, this is the way that I think about when it's 4, is that Alabama is always going to have a spot. They're the only team in the country that can lose 2 games. They haven't had to yet, but they could. They didn't play in their own SEC championship game. The last time Alabama Georgia played each other in the championship, Alabama wasn't even in the championship game, and they made it here. And Auburn, the team that had beaten them both, didn't even get in the college football playoff. So, we talk about fairness. We go back to the Tigers, but
Sure.
looking at how it's set up, Alabama's going to have a spot. The SEC is going to have a spot. Normally, Clemson's going to have a spot, and then the other one's a wild card. It's the Big Ten, it's the Pac-12, or the Big 12. Oklahoma had a lot of it in recent history. The Pac-12 doesn't have a lot of respect. Now it's kind of like the Big Ten gets preferential treatment, and Notre Dame. So we've really outdone. We've outworn the britches of this 4-team playoff. It needs to be bigger. It needs to be. I think 12 makes a lot of sense. But to get to your point, we didn't have to see this. No, we could have seen Alabama, Georgia play in the semifinals, but they're not going to do that because they don't want to have, in my opinion, this isn't the college football playoff saying it, but in my opinion, they don't want to have 2 of the same conference teams playing, especially a few weeks after they had just played each other in the SEC championship, more than likely. So I knew when I came up with my predictor of the 4 teams, yes, Cincinnati is deserving of better than 4. They're the only undefeated team in America of 130 FBS schools. But I don't just do my prediction based on what I think is right. I do it based on what I think is actually going to happen. Because what is right, Texas A&M and Cincinnati should have been in last year. Notre Dame was a joke last year. But this season, we look at, I knew Alabama was going to be 1 because they beat Georgia. So you can't keep Georgia at 1, and you're going to put an SEC team at 1. They're going to put the Big Ten at 2 because they're going to move somebody down. Georgia's going to go to 3 because they lost to Alabama, and Cincinnati is going to be like, just be proud you got in. We'll put you at 4. Is it right? No. But they're not going to have 2 SEC teams playing in the semifinal round. So I agree to your point that does it make sense that this is what they should have done? No. But is it what they're going to do? Yes. Because Michigan, as you can see, wasn't deserving of being number 2. I could have argued Alabama, Cincinnati, Georgia, Michigan. And then we would have seen Cincinnati and Georgia play a rematch from the Peach Bowl that I was at the end of last season, which I thought would have been incredible because 85% of that game went to Cincinnati and the last 2 possessions went to Georgia.
Yep. And I think that matchup would have been much better than it was. But, who are we? We just do observations.
Yeah,
well, we do observations, but, what is wrong with saying that Cincinnati should have been playing Georgia, and obviously Michigan didn't show up. Anybody that wants to contemplate Cincinnati's worth, they lost by 21. Georgia beat Michigan by 23. So in that case, Michigan's worse than Cincinnati, if that's the metric. I mean, there's so many things that have happened in this college football playoff. Ohio State scored 0. Washington's been blown out. Clemson's been blown out. We've seen Alabama get blown out by Clemson. Notre Dame's been embarrassed twice. Cincinnati, as I said, going into the playoff, unless you can score negative points, they can't look worse than Clemson, Ohio State, and Alabama have looked at times in the college football playoff. They got points on the board, and they were within striking distance of making this game a lot closer. Nick Saban, of all people, has stated numerous times that they had a worthy opponent, and they didn't consider that game a blowout. But, I mean, I agree with you that Cincinnati should have been put in a different place. And I think it would have behooved the committee to have a Peach Bowl rematch with Cincinnati and Georgia. The only problem is that Cincinnati may have gotten the best of Georgia because a lot of those same players are on both sides, and the coaches are obviously still there with Kirby Smart and Luke Fickell. So that would have been a danger zone for the committee because, gosh forbid, Cincinnati wins the game. Then what do we do? And we can't have Cincinnati in the championship game because they're going to get blown out. Well, Alabama got blown out recently too.
Exactly my point.
And I agree with you about the different games. Since this college football playoff, you had Florida State beat Auburn in the championship game, my Noles. And then the next year later got derailed by an Oregon team that in that third quarter, it was to the point my brother had to give me ice cream, because I was so upset. And it took me to Baskin Robbins. It's like, here, buddy. I'm like, thanks.
Yeah.
But, we need, we got to come up with something, and I feel like that's what we need to do, come up with a 6 or 8 play, something, because to make it better. And I feel like if you have a 14 playoff, I think they need to have 2 play-in games to get, to see who's going to be in the 4th seed or the 3rd seed to make it more interesting. Yeah.
Well, I think what needs to happen is we need to not, always set this thing up that the SEC teams get to play each other in the championship. And because then, to the people that love the SEC, listen, this is a very clear thing. There's 3 areas of college football that get preferential treatment in the college football playoff: the SEC, the Big Ten, and Notre Dame.
Right.
The SEC gets it because they deserve it. The Big Ten gets it, but they don't deserve it. And Notre Dame gets it because of history. So the reality of it all is, if you're going to give preferential treatment to an independent school that doesn't have a strength of schedule inside of their conference, and to be completely honest, Notre Dame hasn't wowed anybody about anything in the last 2 years, in my opinion, if we look statistically at what they've done. And then beyond that, you look at the fact that the Big Ten beats up on each other. And think about this. Michigan and Michigan State played unranked teams and beat the hell out of them. And they ended up top 10 in the polls. So then when they played each other, it was a top 10 bout. No, it wasn't. It was, I beat unranked teams. I beat unranked teams. Who's going to beat one another? And when Michigan State lost to Purdue, who was unranked, Purdue got ranked the next week almost to give value to the Michigan State loss, and Michigan State didn't even drop out of the top 10. So the ranking system is set up to already put the teams in that they want to put in. Cincinnati just was in a perfect storm where the committee genuinely could not fight. They beat Notre Dame head-to-head. Baylor, got that victory over Oklahoma State. So, I mean, when we look at the different things that were happening here at the end of it all, it just didn't make sense to not include Cincinnati, but it's unfair to have a system set up where you put the college football playoff rankings out. They did it to UCF. They put UCF so low that they can't argue them up 8 spots into the college football playoff when they're undefeated. And then they go and beat Auburn, who beat Georgia and Alabama that year. You have to expand the playoff. You have to allow the SEC winner, the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the American each a spot. And then you give open opportunity to Coastal Carolina and Appalachian State and all these other teams. And then you can put your precious Notre Dame in there. And listen, to the Notre Dame fans, I don't hate Notre Dame. I'm just telling you, you have an unfair advantage. And anybody else would love to get 100% of their TV money, not have to be in a conference, and know if they go undefeated or if they lose one game that they're going to be discussed in the college football playoff. Right. When other teams are being told that their conference isn't strong enough. Notre Dame's not even in a conference, and they're basing it on history. Notre Dame does not beat good teams these last 2 years. They're not ranked teams. They're not strong teams, and yet they're always in the discussion, which to me, if Cincinnati did not play them in the regular season, did not play them on the road, did not beat them on the road by double digits, Notre Dame would have somehow found a way to squeak into the playoff, and it's wrong. It's wrong.
Yeah. Well, let's bring in some people who are sitting in the bullpen, okay? If you want to, they're going to join us right now. We got Kurt McNair. He works for Alabama. So, hi, Kurt. How you doing?
Good. How are you guys today?
Thank you so much for coming on. And then let's bring in our friend Rob Sanders, who does a lot of stuff in the South Carolina area. So let's bring him in. Hey, Rob.
Gentlemen, good morning.
All right. So we're talking about the national championship game here, between Georgia and Alabama. And Dan was just talking about the points about the college football playoff. Let's talk about the college football playoff. Do you see the playoff expanding so we don't have the same nothing against Notre Dame, against Alabama and Georgia? Yeah, that's going to be a great game on Monday night. But what can make the nation look like all these other teams be part of it? So let's go with Kirk. What do you think about the playoff? What do you want to see in the future?
Well, I certainly see the appeal of a 12-team playoff. However, I also think that the mission of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee is to get the two best teams in the playoff. And I think they've done that every year, not necessarily ranked them 1 and 2, but had the two best teams in there. And I think the BCS did that. I thought the BCS just picking 2 teams got the right 2 teams every year. So, you can expand it, but I don't think you're going to particularly change it very much in outcomes. In a year like this, where there are so obviously 2 teams that are better than everybody else, Alabama and Georgia, you'd be hard pressed to convince me that anybody else is close to them right in this year.
Right. Rob, where are you, bud?
Sorry about that. I was pulling up my notes.
That's okay. That's okay.
What you got, bud?
You do a lot of stuff with South Carolina with the Gamecocks and Clemson. You're in the South Carolina area. What is your take on that? What's your take?
As far as the college football playoff, I think if you expand it anymore, you water it down.
Okay.
I don't like the idea of having. I think it's going to expand, but the idea of going past 8 makes it just silly. We just watched a season full of bowl games that, and there were opt-outs and everything else, but I guess I sound like I'm the old man screaming at the sky here, but when I was a kid, a bowl game actually meant something. Right. Now we have the dining room table bowl, and you have 2 teams in it that don't want to be there. Right. So I think college football playoff will expand, but it's just going to water it down. We're going to end up with a lot of blowouts like we've had in the past, and once again, it's like putting just water in your coffee, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right. I think with the college football playoff, they have a 4-team playoff. I think they should do. I was talking to Dan and George earlier before we got you guys on. They should do 2 play-in games, and the winner of that will become the 3rd and 4th seed. That'll be a little more challenging because you'll be like, okay, you can pick whoever you want, and it'll be like it's almost like baseball when they do that 1-game playoff. In Major League Baseball, I think this year they're going to get rid of it or whatever. But would they do something like that? Do you want to see something like that, Dan or George, or who wants to take it?
Well, I'll tell you what I think about that. It's in basketball, they have the 4 teams that play into the NCAA tournament. Baseball, you mentioned. Football is different. An extra game for those guys that had to play it would be a big advantage for the teams that did not have to play that play-in game. And they're already the 2 best teams, or whatever. So I think that would be I don't think that's the best solution. I think that I'd go back to what we talked about earlier, that anything you do just about waters it down. But maybe there would be a solution that would make the bowls more relevant, or at least more of them. Wait until after the bowl games are all played, and the way they're set up now with, SEC and the Sugar, Big Ten and Pac-12 and the Rose, so on. Run all that stuff through, and then have a selection committee pick the 2 best teams from the bowls. You have the bowls relevant. You have just one more game for 2 teams, and I don't think it's broken. But if we're going to fiddle with it, let's fiddle with it in a way that has a chance to make it better.
Right.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to say that, I think I don't think a play-in game would make sense of it, because it would water it to me, it would kind of diminish it for a Cincinnati or one of those teams trying to get into it. I think the reality of it all is we all know the SEC is the best conference in football. That's not a question. We could argue over the last couple of years that Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, if Florida was trending upward instead of the way that they trended downward this season, you could have put Florida in there, LSU. There's so many teams in the SEC that could make it into the college football playoff. And so I think expansion is necessary because you don't want to keep out what I think, especially with Oklahoma and Texas coming in and how it's going to push them. The SEC is going to be commanding at least, 2 spots, 3 spots, maybe 4 spots. So you're going to have to expand it out to let those teams in, but you still have to look at the quote unquote Power 5. You still have to give some respect to what the American has done on paper, which cannot be refuted. And then there's Notre Dame. So I don't think it dilutes it if you expand it out to 10 or 12, because I think with the way the SEC is expanding, if they don't expand the playoff out, then how are we going to argue that the SEC doesn't deserve almost every spot?
Go ahead, George.
So I'm going to go back. I can't remember who talked about. I think it was Kirk that talked about the basketball field of 64. Let's look at what happened there. 64 is not good enough. Okay, we have a playing game to set the field of 64. Okay, there's always going to be a team or 2 or 4 that are aggravated that they're not playing in the game. So think about this: you expand it to 12, right? Then someone says, well, my team still didn't get a chance to play. I think we got to go to 16. So it becomes more difficult to set a field when you start expanding upon, I think, past 4. It's not a perfect system by any stretch of the means. I would rather have computer data. I would rather have those types of things put in play that it takes out a subjective decision versus, having objective data. Once again, you don't know what the criteria is going to be year to year with the College Football Playoff Committee. And I'm not bad-mouthing them by any stretch of the means.
Right.
But every year, their point seems to change. There's no mode of consistency. And I think if there was consistency in play, I think the question becomes less and less about having to make change.
What do you think about that, Rob?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Go ahead. Kirk, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I understand your thing, your point there, and it's the perception. I think it's not that they're not getting the right teams. It's just you're right. It seems like what's the point of emphasis this year? Is it the eye test? Those sorts of things. And if you go back to the computers like they used in the BCS system, I would have no problem with that except for one thing. They kept all their analytics secret. They said this is proprietary information. So we're not going to tell you how we're coming up with this. We're just doing it. And I think that was a bad situation.
It's about transparency, and I agree with it, Kirk, 100%. You got to know what the rules are, what the criteria is, and then you just have at it. But then it goes back to one more thing. College football like it was back in the 1980s. On Saturday afternoon, the best teams playing each other every Saturday. You don't have that anymore. You got folks protecting schedule so they can make the college football playoffs.
Oh, I agree. And back in the old days, back in where we were kids, Dan and Kurt and Rob, we had like less bowl games, and the teams had to earn it. It's like now if you get a 5-7 record or a 4-6 record, you can write a waiver form and go, can I go to a bowl game because we had 2 games canceled because of COVID. We didn't have that back in the 80s. It used to be 6 wins and you go bowling. No 5 loss teams, no 5-7, no whoever. And now it's like to the point like Rutgers was 5-7 this year. It's like, okay, but their APR was whatever. They got to go with their graduation rate. To me, it's like, okay, what else do we have to go by? What if their graduation rate is not better than Florida State, but they want to go with Rutgers because they're in New York and it's a better market, for a Gator Bowl broadcast. it's getting to the point. It's like we got too many bowl games, and we need to get back to being, to these games that you have to earn it instead of saying, "Oh, we're going to go to the Holiday Bowl. Wait a minute, we're not playing." Right, Dan?
Well, I think, it was interesting this year to do a show where I predicted 43 bowl games. It took almost 2 hours to get through all this stuff. 86 teams. And I think the reality of it is when you look at 130 FBS teams and 86 of them are going bowling, this is what it tells me. It's the only sport, it's the only level of sport, collegiately or professionally in America, where more than 50% of the teams that compete are playing in the postseason. The postseason should be for a select few. Mm-hmm. It should not be for the vast majority. Right. Now, from a coach's standpoint and a player's standpoint, they're going to argue this other side of it, which I've talked to them about. And what that is they get an extra 3 weeks of practice. They get to work out the young guys. They get, the kids get to have a good time. They get to have a nice vacation. They get gifts from the bowls. There's so much that goes into what they get from it, what the school gets from it monetarily. So at the end of the day, it's extra practice, it's extra money, it's extra time, it's another experience for them. So that's and it's a feather in the cap of a coach to say, hey, I've gone to 7 bowl games in 8 years. So I can understand that piece of it. But the other piece of it is 43 bowl games. When I say 86 teams and 44 aren't making it, you don't want to be one of those 44. And because it's become so ridiculous that and anybody can have a bowl. I never thought in a million years there'd be a bowl named Tony the Tiger or the Cheez-It Bowl or the Dollar General Bowl that we've had. I'm like, how many people have to go to Dollar General to afford that game? But it's crazy to me that and now Jimmy Kimmel, I didn't know that a talk show host could have a bowl game. So the Wake Up Call Bowl is coming to you soon, I guess. We're going to do the Dan Tortora Bowl.
I was just going to say that. I said, you can have the Wake Up Call Bowl.
Yeah,
when I saw the Jimmy Kimmel LA thing, I thought it was a joke. I honestly thought it was like him just razzing somebody. I didn't know it was a real thing, but shout out to Jimmy Kimmel. He's got the money. He's working with Disney and ABC and ESPN, so why not?
Yeah. And you can have your own bowl game in Syracuse. You could bring people come to Syracuse. Just bring a plow.
Well, it's one of the best known arenas in America, but the reality to me is 43 bowl games. It's just, if you want to talk about diluting it, which we heard Kirk talk about here, that dilutes it to a point where they start on December 17th. There's a bowl game going. We just saw the Texas Bowl in the middle of the college football playoff semi and the national championship. There should not be a single bowl game in between the semifinal and the championship game, because that makes literally no sense to say sandwiched in between who we're trying to find to be the national champion is a random bowl game that has no purpose in the college football playoff. That, to me, is wrong. That needs to be way before.
That sounds like deja vu to me, Chris. I think I've said that a few hundred times.
Well, I talked to Mac Brown. This is what they should do. These players opting out, and you have the COVID situation, and some teams didn't have enough players. I think Mississippi State had like 16 people on COVID. And I asked Mac Brown 2 weeks ago, during the Duke Mayo Bowl media day, I said, are they going to do like a practice squad type format? Because I feel like they got to find somebody to fill this hole. And I know, Kurt, do you have any eligibility left to play quarterback if Saban calls you and say, hey, would you like to throw in for a couple days? But they got to find these people, because it feels like these schools want to go to these bowl games, and they got to go home because they don't have enough players. And they said they're working on this, Rob. They're working on if we say, Rob, you played 4 games and you opt out for your red shirt, whatever. I could call you up and say, Rob, would you like to play for Dan? But you could keep your eligibility, but we call you a replacement player. Do you think that's a great idea?
No, I don't. I'm not trying to mock, but I don't think there's any way that we can go back and put the toothpaste back in the tube, I guess is the best right. term to look at. But I think with players getting hurt and COVID and everything else, right now, the bowl season that we had was just different. A lot of it had to do with COVID opt-outs and everything else. But when Matt Corral got hurt in that bowl game, which meant nothing to anyone outside of Ole Miss, and Baylor. I think a lot of players seen that and they were like, wait a minute, that could happen to me too. And if Matt Corral is hurt, it could cost him millions of dollars.
Right.
So I think we're going to get to a point where no one's going to play. And I think that the bowl season is basically going to be your freshmen and sophomores that are going to stay and trying to get some good tape on themselves for the NFL to see. That's what you're going to see. Or it's going to be a showcase for, hey, I played well here and then I can go to the transfer portal. But I think the idea of juniors and seniors staying in the regular bowls is kind of out the window. And I don't think we're far from the point where, especially if they expand the college football playoff, where guys are opting out of that too, simply because, hey, I can go and I'm going to make, $4 million in the NFL, whatever your round number is, or I can go play in this game and someone rolls my hamstring and tears it and I lose my spot, basically. So I don't think we're that far from that.
Yeah. It's a different football than when we were kids growing up. We were, like I was talking to my brother on New Year's Day, we were trying to figure out what stations carried what bowl game. Remember CBS carried the Cotton Bowl. They covered, and they also covered, I think they had the Sun Bowl still. ABC had the Rose Bowl, the Citrus Bowl, and the Sugar Bowl. And then you had NBC that had the Fiesta and the Orange Bowl. Now it's like ESPN runs everything. It's like, good Lord, can we have a network that can play the Orange Bowl, or does ESPN have to run every single thing to these people and say, oh, we got to run the Orange Bowl and the Rose Bowl, because the Rose Bowl should be on ABC during New Year's Day, not on ESPN. Be great.
Well, I get what you're saying on that, but I wanted to. One of you gentlemen mentioned, the SEC is the best conference and all that. I'm beginning not to buy that, and
Okay.
I know when I say that, people look at me like I'm silly. The SEC is a couple of A+ teams and then a bunch of C's. If you look at the way that it shakes out, you've got, of course, this year Alabama's always going to be Alabama, and then Georgia is right there with them. But when you look at the SEC East, especially, I mean, the talent level just falls off. You mentioned protecting schedules. Florida hasn't played a non-conference out-of-state game since 1991. They haven't won an out-of-conference game out-of-state since 1989. They protect themselves with teams. You have to come here to play us in our place, or they'll play at a neutral site, which is completely different and just ruins college football, in my opinion, because the game's supposed to be on site at the school. So I think especially in the SEC East right now, they are flat. Now, if you want to talk about the SEC West and how great that is, yeah, we can definitely talk about that. But when I look at the Big Ten and I see the teams that are there, Ohio State this year, Michigan State this year, Michigan. I mean, you've got a slew of good teams, not to mention Iowa, who had a really good season as well. I think they could go toe-to-toe and possibly be thought of as a better conference this year than what the SEC has. Now, in the future, though, it's going to change because the SEC brings in Oklahoma and Texas, and I think you have the better coaches in the SEC. But I think that we're at a point now where we're just living on this, hey, the SEC's done great stuff, and I know they've won all those national titles, but if we're looking at a total conference, their top two are great, but after that, you got a bunch of C's, in my opinion.
So, Rob, what's going to happen is this, too, is the Big Ten is set up the exact same way as the SEC. Their conferences are so unbalanced, it's just ridiculous. But what's going to happen is you're going to start getting these super conferences. And ultimately what it's going to end up being will be two conferences. Or maybe just four conferences, you know what I'm saying? And
right.
It'll end up being a round robin based upon that.
But see, one of the things that I've talked about this on my show in Columbia, Ohio State scheduled a home and home with Oregon. If you told Alabama that before this past season, they would have laughed at you. You want us to go to Oregon? Are you out of your mind?
Absolutely.
That's the kind of silliness that that the SEC says. Hey, we'll play you in a neutral site game. But we're not going to play a home and home with you. So we can't have this whole conversation of, hey, we're the best ever, when in all actuality, yeah, you beat up each other, but you're not playing these other out-of-conference teams with home and home games. Now I think they're getting away from that now, but the SEC's built their reputation on what they've done as far as their top teams. But after that, it's kind of flat. I mean, we can use Clemson as an example. Clemson scheduled home and home games with Texas A&M, with Auburn, and they did really well with them. Those are SEC West teams. They have an SEC East team in South Carolina on their schedule every year. The Gamecocks aren't exactly the cream of the crop, but the point is that other teams can actually go in and win games against the SEC, but it seems like their top half, they don't want to schedule that home and home. I know that LSU did what they did a set with Texas, and that's good, and they went out and played UCLA. And what happened? They went out there with that, quote, SEC talent, that SEC speed, and UCLA handed it to them. So I think when they get to a spot where they can actually be exposed as to, all right, we're going to go somewhere and play in a hostile environment, I think that the SEC will fall back to the pack a little bit as far as the perception of where they are.
Right, exactly. Well, let's do predictions right now. So we're wrapping up the show here. Kurt, what do you like to see on Monday night? What do you think is the final score going to be?
I don't think it'll be as high as it was in the last game. My modus operandi is I always think Alabama's going to win, and I'm almost always right. So I'll stick with Saban and the better quarterback and the best football player on the field, Will Anderson. And Alabama won the first game because they were the better team. So I'm going with Alabama, but like 27-21, that kind of game.
Okay. Dan, go ahead.
Well, I think that Georgia has a lot to hang their hat on this season. And I think that on paper, it would be enticing to pick them. But I do not bet against Nick Saban. And so I'm going to say Alabama 28, Georgia 21.
And Rob, what do you think? What do you think?
I agree with the gentleman before me there. You if you're a bettor, you're going to end up broke and homeless if you're betting against Nick Saban. That's just the way that it is. Someone tweeted out a picture this morning. I didn't tweet it out, but he got off the plane and he was wearing a leather jacket. I've never seen Nick Saban in a leather jacket, and I think he's got those guys squared away. Now, I do think that if we took all the numbers and stuff off of them, I think Georgia is the better team on paper, but the guy that's 5'4" on the sidelines over there is a heck of a bump for Kirby Smart and that coaching staff. I think Nick Saban's going to he's going to walk the dog. I got Alabama 31-13.
31-13.
Mm-hmm.
All right, George, what's your prediction there, bud?
Well, I can't go back on what I said earlier. It's hard to beat somebody twice. I don't think you let it happen twice. I think Georgia has something to prove. Winning the game that counts. I think that they come out on top. And I'm not a betting man, so this is why I'm not worried about losing my house on it. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say that Georgia beats Alabama by 2 touchdowns. And I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, I think. And I'm going to say it's 45-31.
Okay. Well, I want to say, like you said, Dan, you don't bet against Nick Saban because he'll find a way to, beat you. And I feel like Kirby Smart can't beat him. It's like one of those like Bill Belichick thing. His disciples can't beat him, except for if you have the guy down in Miami, Flores, who knows how to beat him. Yeah, But I feel like Alabama's going to win, but it's going to be a close game, and I feel like it's going to win by somebody's going to hit a winning field goal at the end, or might go to overtime and be one of those classic games that we're going to talk about for years to come of who scored a touchdown in the end zone. Like that one time they played each other with the guy from Alabama winning it, in the end zone. So I feel like Alabama's going to win by 3. So it's going to be. I'm thinking it's like 30-27.
And logistically, you can't lose because Georgia's a 3-point dog.
Right.
So they're expected to win that game, and that's the current line, I believe, is 3.
Right. Exactly.
Well, and if I can make one mention, because I think bringing up that that the SEC lost to UCLA. The American Athletic with Cincinnati and Memphis beat UCLA in scheduling those non-conference games. And to your point, Rob, I want to let you know this because you said trying to put the toothpaste back in. I don't know if you've ever tried to do that. It's very difficult.
Exactly.
It is.
When you're trying to keep some in there because you're on vacation and you don't have to buy another one. And I tried to push it back. It's almost impossible. So I appreciate the comment.
Yeah. So
when you're in college and you're broke and you're trying not to buy toothpaste, it's like, hey, see if we can stuff that back in there.
And under the cap gets really messy.
Oh my God, it gets annoying.
Exactly.
It's like you have to clean that out and flick it, get rid of it. Well, Dan, we're going to work on this spring. We're going to get you a bowl game. So let's work on that. Yeah. Let's get
no offense to Jimmy Kimmel, but come on. I mean, I'll go toe-to-toe with Jimmy Kimmel any day.
Yeah. So where do you want to put your bowl game? I think, Syracuse, something warm, maybe New York City?
I might have to put it in Jacksonville since there's no other good show I get to watch there lately. My Jaguars are killing me.
That's a great idea.
Hey, we need the Jaguars, back to the NFL real quick. We need the Jaguars to win over the Colts. Can you guarantee us a victory? Because here in Baltimore, they need a win over the Steelers. And if they don't win over the Steelers, people here in Baltimore is going to be starting waiting for Orioles baseball, and that's boring.
I've looked at every playoff scenario that the NFL set us for the AFC, and I want to just make it clear and look straight into the camera when I say this. Any team, and I'm looking at you, Raiders, Chargers, and the Raiders and the Chargers can figure out a way to do this without it, but Raiders, Chargers, Ravens, Steelers, let me be clear about something. And to the Patriots that need Indianapolis to lose because they're trying to get number 1 seed, anyone that needs Indianapolis to lose this weekend, please do not rely on Jacksonville. We're going to have the number 1 pick. Anybody that it says plus Indianapolis loss with their win, I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen. But I'd love to see Big Ben keep going. I'd love to see Lamar Jackson get healthy and get into these playoffs. Yeah. But anybody hoping that the Colts are going to lose this game, that you got to be out of your mind for that. And I love Jacksonville, but I got to be honest.
Well, guys, back into the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly.
What'd you say?
You can't back into the playoffs. You got to help yourself.
Yeah, you got to keep. I mean, shout out to the Cowboys who, for the first time in like 100 years, didn't need to just win one of their last 3 games, and they couldn't do it. They wrapped up the division. So good for them. Good for Jerry Jones to finally not be out of control of your own destiny at the end of the season. So that was good.
All right, you guys. Thanks so much for coming on. Kirk McNair does the stuff for Bama Online. Enjoy the football this weekend. Rob, thanks for coming on in a short notice. We'll get you on during the before the NFL draft or whatever we do during the spring and summer. And Dan, have fun in Jacksonville. I know there's no more Urban Meyer down there, but just tell hair bun guy Trevor Lawrence it's going to be okay.
I'm going to feel like Michael Keaton. If they actually wear the clown mask, I'm going to feel like Batman in A Sea of the Joker. So I'm ready for
it. Exactly. Well, guys, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Pleasure.
All right, see ya.
See ya.
All right, that was fun. That was fun there. I just had to – they all came on at the same time, so I was like, let's just throw them on,
Hey, you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. An impromptu panel discussion, it was pretty darn good.
Exactly. It was good. Well, we got to roll out of here because I have to go take care of a sick girlfriend who needs me. But reminder, tomorrow, Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, this gentleman will be live on the program. So Chris Barnes will be joining us. We'll talk about his kid who basically made it second place in the U.S. Amateur this weekend. That's not bad for a 20-year-old.
Another bowl game, but legitimate bowl game.
Yeah, this is a real bowl game. This is 10 pins, and you got a bowling ball that's bigger inside of your melon.
Yep.
Yeah. So speaking of bowling, real quick, dude, what was your average? Did you bowl a lot of rec leagues, or you just bowled for fun? No,
I actually bowled on the amateur tour.
Oh, you did?
Yep, I actually bowled in some of those stuff. I had like a 189, 190 average.
Oh, nice.
My highest was a 277.
Wow, mine's 256, and I did that for I bowled it on my grandmother and grandfather's anniversary, so it was an anniversary gift for them.
10 strikes in a row.
Yeah, dude, it was so nervous. I was actually like, it's funny when you have people bowling league, and you're sitting there and you have people like behind you, and you look around, and you're like, well, what is everybody watching me for?
Yeah.
Like I
Well,
remember.
I bowled mine. I bowled mine in a sanctioned tournament.
Oh, cool.
So
yeah, I saw my brother one time. He was bowling. He had like the first 6 in a row, and I went down to see what the heck was going on. He was in the same league as me, and it looked like it was like an ABC professional bowler store telecast. Yeah, like everybody was like, I'm sitting there going, I was like, oh well, And then Will gets like a strike, and he goes, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, calm down. Yeah,
I carried a strong 10. Yes. Unfortunately, it was a 10 that was left, and I finished the game with 277. But it was wicked nervous, man.
Yeah. Did you ever like I used to watch it on TV on every Saturday, and I thought I was on TV a lot when I was a kid, and I used to like run them out after like the first 2 strikes, like Mike Albee, until my mom yelled at me.
I ran out all my strikes, man.
Oh my god, dude, they don't do that anymore. I used to run them out across different lanes and go like.
I kept it simple.
Yeah.
I kept it simple. I didn't want to obstruct anybody else. But since I have that stretch of lane until my ball's finished, I had a little run out and I had a little finish at the end. Yes.
Yeah. I used to do Brian Walsh. Brian Walsh used to do the like that. And one time he actually forgot he had a microphone on and dropped the F-bomb.
Well,
and
I'm trying to work on things and make a comeback in the bowling arena.
I'm thinking this year I should. One of my on my bucket list is I want to bowl in a regional. Just say, hey, I did it and Steve did it. Yeah, but he bowled pretty bad, in that regional. But but I have to get new bowling balls because the bowling balls I have are so old, they're not even sanctioned.
My bowling balls would still be good.
Yeah.
I just need to get them resurfaced and probably replugged. My shoes are so old that they're dry rotted.
Yeah, I gotta get new shoes too because mine broke, down near the heel part. So anyway, we'll talk more about that on Tuesday night. So folks, thanks for joining us this afternoon here on the program. Real quick, North Dakota State 21-0 over Montana State right now. So that's another thing going on, So
there goes my prediction.
Yeah, there goes your prediction. Glad you didn't bet the house on that, so your parents, your wife doesn't like. What'd you sell today, honey?
You just want someone different, and you got to go out there. I could be I'm not a homer, but I could say go with everybody else and go with North Dakota. But, there's nothing wrong with going for the underdog.
Right. Exactly. Well, let me get going. Let me go help my sick girlfriend. See you guys. See you all Tuesday night at 7:30 right here on StreamYard. Have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy North Dakota State and Montana State.
Enjoy the rest of college football.
See ya.